Welcome to American Players Theater Talkbacks to Go. I'm Buzz Kemper, and I invite you to take a walk up the hill with Orange Schroeder and me as Orange chats with director David Frank and actors David Daniel and Colleen Madden about American Players Theater's production of Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare.
We're talking about Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing, and we have David Frank, who is directing this year's production, Colleen Madden, who plays Beatrice, and David Daniel, who plays Benedick. And I want to start out by asking David, this is a play that's been very popular. It's been made into several movies recently. What's going to be different about the APT production?
Oh, I'm trying not to think about that. I love the play. I've always loved the play. I never had a chance to do it. So you find a great company of actors and follow where it takes you. I think it's important, no, I don't want to think of it as different. I think it's us, these two in particular, Colleen and David.
And where will it be set?
It's set mid-19th century Italy, which makes sense. It's set in Sicily anyway, and there are a few Italian references, not many, doesn't matter that much. But I think what does matter is you want to get it, in some ways, you want to get it as close to contemporary as you can without getting so close that you can no longer buy the social restrictions and the hierarchy that I think are very important to the play. So it's funny how often you go through all, where do you want it, where does it feel best? You've got to put it somewhere. And how many productions of Much Ado seem to end up in 19th century Italy in different decades, as maybe it just seems to belong there.
And Colleen and David, have either of you done the roles you're playing before?
I have. This is the third time I've done the role, and it feels like the first time I've actually spent any time working on it. I mean, the last time I did it was about 13, 14 years ago, and was a completely different production, and that production required different things. And over those 13, 14 years, and especially working here at APT, my idea of what a play is and my job as an actor has changed greatly. So I feel like this is the first time I'm coming to the role.
And Colleen, have you done it before?
I've never done Beatrice. I love the play. I've always loved the play, and I've always loved her. When I was a very young undergrad, before really I was involved seriously in theater, I played Balthazar. And then a decade or so after that, I was in a very interesting production in Chicago in which I played Dogberry.
Wow.
And Margaret. And the concept of that play was that it was post-World War I. And so the women were the watch because all the men had been off to war. So the women, those of us, Dogberry and Verges, the watch had, rolling pins and baby dolls, and we were doing double duty, doing our women's work plus keeping the town safe. That was a lot of fun. But I'm having a blast doing Beatrice. I love her so much. I can't tell you.
I've heard that the key to success for this play is to have an equally matched Benedick and Beatrice. So I want you each to talk about each other a little bit.
Oh, that's easy. I have so many terrible things to say about David. Well, we've known each other for nearly 20 years. Can you believe that? We were in grad school together, and I would say that we have a history, nothing sordid, but, we've been friends for a long, long time, but David is David. And I'm me. We're very different. So I think that we've had in our friendship, lots of ups and downs. And there were days, in grad school, it was very tense time. Much busier. The days were much busier than they are here, really. So we would get quite short with each other and cranky with each other. And you had no choice but to forgive each other. So really, we've had when we talked about doing this show last year or the year before, I remember thinking, I hope it's David Daniel. Because we've had this, I love him as an actor, I love him as a person, but we can really get on each other's nerves.
I was a little disappointed that it was Colleen. I was hoping that they would bring in someone else for it. When we had fun and As You Like It. We just had so much
fun.
And it's
oh my gosh, it was a party doing that.
It was, and I tell you, it comes. This is one of the byproducts. Maybe even the point of having a core company is that people work together and they are familiar. And not familiar with, I know how you work, you know how, but just like we don't need to impress the other person. We don't have to be on our best behavior. We can actually be free to be bad, which is hugely important in the rehearsal process.
I think not only do I really admire David's work, but I always feel that David is my ally. So what a great experience. I mean, I trust you so much all the time. And I think we feel free to give each other help or notes, and we really are listening for each other. The trick is that on stage, we shouldn't be each other's ally until much, much later in the play. But it's easier to, well, simply put, it's easier to be free when you know that the other person has your back.
Yeah, you trust the person. And I mean, Colleen's just huge experience and her talent on stage, and you can trust that because I don't know where the scene is going to go when we're rehearsing in a room. I have no panic because it's like she's going after something. How do I follow? Where do I fit in? And we can actually play together. And then David will say, oh, I like this bit. I don't like that. Or let's not do any of that. Let's go after something brand new, and neither of us have any idea what that brand new thing is, and we can just jump in and try it.
None of us.
That's right, yes. It's a lot of trust that goes on in that room, especially with this play. In one or two of those key scenes, the slightest change the temperature of the play changes with a turn here or a turn there or full back, or if we open up the pause between these two words, that's a completely different play. So there's a lot of minute work that takes a lot of trust.
And we've worked with David Frank for 14 years, I have, and 16 years you have? Have you been here 16 years? So that's equally valuable to have a director who I just feel that I'm completely taken care of. Yeah. All the time.
Colleen, you mentioned playing Dogberry, which I certainly think having a woman play Dogberry is a unique approach and not one that APT is going to be taking this year, I assume. But David, can you talk a little bit about Dogberry and the role that the clown figures play?
It's funny, Shakespeare always manages to make his comedic elements to be thematically connected at some level. And I think in this play, which among other things, if you deals with self-confidence, placed or misplaced, that the Dogberry's immense self-confidence, probably a symptom of its opposite, deep down, manages to be thematically connected. It is true, I mean, it's there for plot reasons, and it's there for, as Shakespeare always does, for orchestration purposes, for contrast. But it's that preposterous character who utterly believes that he is God's gift to vocabulary and articulation and words. It's pretty splendid, and as I say, connected.
Now, we do have a very lighthearted play in many ways, but I think that you told me earlier that it's not entirely lighthearted. David, do you want to take that one?
We're just trying to follow. We're trying to follow the story. I don't want to be lighthearted or not lighthearted. Mm-hmm. We'd like to follow the story. We'd like to hear the rhythms. I mean, that clearly it is. The play is suffused with wit, but that wit is a character trait, and I don't think, we're trying to be funny. I hope that as a byproduct of us trying to follow the story, it will be funny.
In fact, usually the gulling scenes, as they're called, are done with a lot of latsies, a lot of, a lot of
Physical.
comedy, a lot of physical humor.
Can you explain what that means?
A physical humor, a physical bits.
Oh, the gulling scenes.
The gulling scenes. So when the men are trying to trick Benedick into believing that Beatrice is in love with him, and when the women are trying to trick Beatrice into believing Benedick is in love with her, you have Beatrice and Benedick in their respective scenes, falling out of trees and trying not to be seen. There's all sorts of physical machinations, and we're doing some of that, but not that much of it.
Yeah, it's a different, as David said, we're not trying to be funny or not funny. We're just seeing what's there. And Robert, who's our just fantastic voice and text coach on this production, he mentioned, and I've seen this production, I've seen the show many, many times, and this is my 5th time in the play. But he said, if you're doing something, you're hiding in the bushes, or you're carrying the potted plant and pretending to be the potted plant, or stuck in the ceiling, that you can't hear. You can't hear because you're trying to not be seen. And what they say about those characters is huge, and it is life-changing for the characters. And if Beatrice and Benedick don't hear what their friends are saying, they don't make those changes. They can't hear. So we started with, as we always do, we started with the text and what's the story, and then what's theatrical, and we moved from there.
If there was one thing that I think APT would like to pride itself on, is if you had one little word for, really look at those words.
And
really look at them in detail.
And it is both prose and poetry.
It is actually no other play that Shakespeare wrote, with the one exception of Merry Wives of Windsor, has a higher proportion of prose. This is very largely prose, but when it breaks into verse, it is sublime.
And what can you tell us about the title? The Much Ado is referring to Hero's virginity. Is that generally accepted, or...?
The one thing I can say with great confidence, there is no generally accepted conclusion as to the title. I mean, there are a zillion theories, based on the pronunciation of noting and nothing, which was probably the same at that period. You can go on and on and on. Or is it Bloom's nihilism? There is no definitive answer.
But that, speaking of her virginity, that's where I think the darkness, I don't think we're trying to play this darkness up, but in some ways it's quite a dark play. If I was saying the other day, if we women were wearing burqas, I think it would be more understandable in the audience's mind. Mm-hmm. Once the prince and Claudio are misguided into believing that she's not a virgin, they throw her to the ground and reject her. And her father says, let her die. And Beatrice goes on, and Beatrice is the sort of the rebel of the play. She's the one who's saying, I don't need men. But even she says, my kinswoman is dishonored. She's undone. There's nothing left for this young woman. So really, it's quite a that part of the play, that meat, is very, very dark.
So it speaks to us today and always, as many of Shakespeare's works, especially when done at APT, do. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Talkbacks to Go is a production of Orange Tree Imports, Pro Video and Film, and Audio for the Arts. Your host is Orange Schroeder. I'm Buzz Kemper. Our music is by Steve Tibbetts and is used by permission of the artist. Please find us on iTunes and YouTube under APT Talkbacks to Go. Thank you for listening.